Today I will be teaching a lesson on the fundamentals of 3D printing. For our first topic, we will be going over some basic 3D printer terms that are essential for understanding which parts make up the 3D printer and learn about the parts so that you can troubleshoot them in the future if necessary. The first main part, and the most obvious one, is the print bed. It is the platform for your 3D printer to print on. The main goal of the print bed is to provide adhesion so that the 3D printed object sticks onto the bed until you take it off. There are different types of swappable print beds that you can put on for various use cases. One of the most common types of plates are PEI that are all around good, but you can also get some unique ones like glass print beds, which guarantee a smooth finish on the bottom. Some printers offer heated beds with various benefits such as better adhesion and an increased print quality. It is important to be careful around the print bed though, as depending on the type of filament you are using, the temperature can increase to around 100 degrees Celsius, which can cause burns. The next important part of the printer is the nozzle. The hot end heats up the filament and allows it to be pushed through the nozzle and onto the print bed. There are many different options that you can use for the nozzle, and many 3D printers allow you to switch them out. Nozzles with smaller diameters allow for more precision, causing a higher print quality. This does cause the print to take longer though, as it is outputted at a slower rate. The larger nozzles allow for faster prints. However, that lowers the quality of the print. The most common nozzle size and often default is 0.4 millimeters. The size is common because it allows for the print to remain relatively detailed while still allowing for a fast print. The next pieces are the limit switches. The limit switches are on all axes of the printer. They basically tell the printer to stop moving in that axis if the printer reaches the switch. This ensures that the printer does not run past the switch. Limit switches also allow for finding the distance between the nozzle and the print bed before printing. This ensures that the printer is properly calibrated and will most likely not have any mechanical problems during printing. There are also stepper motors, which are used to control the movement on the axes and allow for the print to take place. There is usually a stepper motor on each axis of the printer. The one on the x-axis moves the print head, which allows the nozzle to be positioned correctly. The one on the y-axis sometimes moves the print bed or the print head, depending on the type of 3D printer you have. Next, I will talk about the most important part of 3D printing: safety. First, it should be known that 3D printers constantly emit dangerous particles while they melt the plastic, known as filament, for 3D printing. These particles can be harmful if you remain closer to a 3D printer for extended periods of time. Some of the higher-end 3D printers come with an enclosure, which can trap the particles and prevent them from getting breathed in. Generally, filaments like PLA are not too dangerous to stay around compared to filaments like ABS, which can cause dangerous effects like headaches and nausea at the worst. I would recommend for you to verify how toxic a filament is before trying to use it in a project, as there are many filaments and they all allow for varying levels of toxicity. The main other dangerous part of the 3D printer is heat. You should not put your fingers too close to the nozzle while the 3D printer is on. Instead, that you keep your hands away from the 3D printer until it is off. The 3D printer is mechanical, meaning that if you put your hand in the way of it, it may hit your hand or cause burns from the hot end or the nozzle. The print bed is usually safe to the touch if you're printing common filaments like PLA. Others require more heat though, so it's always better to be safe regardless of what you think. The nozzle or the hot end is always dangerous to the touch no matter what, so ensure that you are not getting too close to it. One last consideration is safety procedures while using resin 3D printers. I will talk about them further later on in the video. However, I will talk about the safety of resin printers right now. Resin itself is very dangerous, as it is not only dangerous to breathe in, but it is also dangerous to handle. This means that you must wear protective equipment while handling resin to ensure safety. Even a face mask isn't always enough to protect against some types of resin, so if you're considering using resin, you should research the proper safety measures before handling it. Some suggestions if you decide to use it are wear chemical resistant gloves, safety glasses or goggles, and cover your clothes just in case. And here is an infographic that recommends gloves, glasses, a mask, and an enclosure. You can pause the video if you want to see the full safety guide on this picture. For our next section, I will talk about the main different filament types that are commonly used throughout 3D printing and why you should choose one over the other. By far, the most common 3D printer filament is a type called PLA. It is relatively cheap and it is very easy to print with because it requires lower temperatures which allow for even basic 3D printers to have higher quality prints. PLA is also biodegradable. This means that it is more of an environmentally friendly solution compared to some of the other types of filaments. Some of the downsides of PLA is that it is often brittle and may break easily depending on how solid your object is. Another common filament is ABS. ABS is harder to print, however it has different material properties that make it superior in some ways depending on your use case. ABS is a stronger plastic, meaning that it has more durability. This allows it to withstand more stress and hotter temperatures. And the last common material is PETG. PETG is sort of the middle ground when it comes to materials. It is often easier to print with than ABS and decently stronger than PLA, which allows it to be a popular choice for 3D printing. Here is a chart that covers most of everything I explained here. You can pause the video if you want to examine it further. Next up, we have the different 3D printer types. Some variations of the 3D printer include industrial use printers, resin printers, and just the standard 3D printer. Industrial 3D printers are often large and very expensive. They often have a very large print bed that allows for large objects to be manufactured. Those printers are also often higher quality and very precise compared to standard ones. The next type of printer is the resin printer. Resin allows for greater detail to be used for the prints, which also means that resin printers are often slow as they use resin instead of standard filament. One issue with the resin is that it costs more than standard filament, and the resin itself is often lacking in part strength and durability. This makes it better for printing things like replicas and exact prototypes for viewing instead of use as an object. There are also many options you can choose from when buying a 3D printer and many factors to consider. The common or standard 3D printers are often used in home or in places like schools to educate. There are some very affordable printers that exist, and I have personal experience with the Bamboo Labs A1 Mini. It is very reliable and somewhat inexpensive. It is beginner friendly, and that's what I would suggest for anyone starting. However, you can research for yourself to see the best printer for you based off of the features you prefer. Printers can range anywhere from 100 to 1000 of dollars, so there's always an option depending on your use case. For this section, I will be talking about basic 3D printer maintenance and how to keep a 3D printer up and running in the future. There are many factors that go into keeping your printer in good condition. It is important to keep the printer lubricated well. Using lubricant allows for the printer to run smoothly. It is recommended that you relubricate the printer every couple of months, or even more depending on how much you use it. The nozzle is another thing that can be cleaned to ensure that the printer remains in good shape. One other thing that you should take into account is keeping the 3D printer's firmware updated, as the printer manufacturers regularly fix bugs and other issues by sending out updates. 3D printers are surprisingly common in many industries in the world. One interesting industry that uses 3D printing is aerospace. Some 3D printed parts are present in planes because of how lightweight they are compared to other materials. This makes it a very useful tool for industries like this. Another interesting industry is the medical industry. They are commonly used in prosthetics as they allow for it to be custom shaped to each individual while still being cost effective. This shows that 3D printing is actually very useful. So while you could buy one for personal use, they also use them in many other industries and many more than I described. This is my video on how to download a 3D model from a website. There's quite a few different websites that you can use. This one is thingiverse.com. Now, you start by searching for the type of model that you want. I will use cat. And you click on the one that you want. And first you can look at the recommended print settings. And you can see that this one requires no supports. And there's some other recommendations and how long it takes to print. So you'd start by clicking download all files, and this will take you to a download screen. Talk about the pre-printing setup and what is required before you go to start a 3D print. First, you should start by ensuring that the settings in the slicer program are accurate for the object you would like to print. Make sure you choose the right material that you want. Check the temperature settings that are set up for the material that you chose on the printer. And next, some printers require bed leveling. Not all printers require bed leveling generally. Most of the ones nowadays have auto leveling features that ensure that the bed is leveled properly. This allows the 3D printer to have an accurate base layer for it to print on. In order to level the bed, you should move the print head to the corner of the bed and put a piece of paper in between the nozzle and the bed. If you do not feel a slight drag from the nozzle, you should adjust one of the leveling screws. Again, this part is only required if you are using a 3D printer that requires manual leveling. And here is an infographic related to how to level the bed if you need to. Some common issues that people encounter after they start a 3D print are things like nozzle clogging and strigging. To fix nozzle clogging, the first step you can take is to try and manually push the filament into the extruder. If this does not fix the problem, you can try and unload and reload the filament. If that does not work, you will have to manually clean out the nozzle and ensure that there are no longer any clogs inside the nozzle. The printer manufacturers usually have videos on how to dismantle certain parts of their 3D printers in case this happens. They also have ways to buy extra parts on their website. To fix the issues like stringing, they are commonly related to the settings of the 3D printer rather than something physical. Settings like retraction distance and retraction speed can be used to fix the stringing issue, and these settings can be changed within the slicer program. And one common school related issue is when using Prusa Slice, it defaults to the mini 3D printer, which our school does not have. You need to change it to the correct printer for it to be set up properly, which should be the Prusa Mark IV. And some other Riverview related 3D printer information. It is recommended to use Prusa Slice as the slicer software, as it is easier to use than the other one. USB is used for the file transfer, and you must upload the file to the software, the slicer software, and then export the G code to the USB drive to plug into the printer. Here are some pictures of the 3D printers we have here at Riverview. As you can see, there are specific temperatures and a specific filament for the Raise 3D printer, as well as a QR code for you to scan. It is important to follow these instructions before starting a print. You can also see the Prusa Mark IV in action in these pictures. Here is the in-depth information for the Prusa Mark IV. It has a large build volume and a high max temperature. It has auto calibration, including bed leveling, as well as an LCD screen. You can use a USB to transfer files to it. It costs about $1,100 if you buy it fully assembled, but it is cheaper if you assemble it yourself. And that concludes my overview of the fundamentals of 3D printing. I hope you were able to learn about the importance of 3D printing safety, maintenance, common issues, and all of the other important sections of this video. I may make a video more focused on the slicer settings in particular, which will be much more in-depth. I learned a lot about 3D printing just by creating this video, and I hope that this video will help you on your 3D printing journey. Here are my citations from my bibliography.